So I just wanted to make a quick video about what it was like with me taking the NHA, National Healthcare Career Association, for the CCMA, or Certified Clinical Medical Assisting. Um, I started 1 year ago today, actually, in a class here in Kentucky. Um, Never had any experience in the medical field whatsoever, outside of just volunteering at a hospital when I was a teenager. Um, it was nerve-wracking because it was a crash course. It was a 4-month program, super quick. Um, so on day one, it was just kind of like getting to know everybody and general medical stuff, like just terminology and stuff like that. I started in an EKG class, which was probably the hardest of the 3 classes I took. Actually, I took 4 classes, but just learning different rhythms and heart blocks and things of that nature that have to do with EKG and different medications that are used, like beta blockers and stuff like that. I was kind of glad I took that class first because, like I said, it was the hardest, so everything just kind of seemed downhill from there. Next, I took phlebotomy. This was probably the fun class, as most people call it. It's very hands-on, learning the order of draw and how to anchor a vein and how to palpate a vein. In this class, I learned a lot about lab in general, such as urine test, HCG, pregnancy, the different types of blood tests ran, like LDLs and ANAs and whatnot. It was pretty interesting. I say it was the easy class, but it was still pretty challenging. If I had to pick one thing that I studied for this, it would definitely be order of draw. If you don't know your order of draw, you will not pass the phlebotomy class. The next class I took was an IV placement class. Just to be clear, I cannot push IVs, but I can install them, for lack of a better term. I can put them in somebody's arm, but I can't push any medication through them. That was interesting. It was very fast-paced, very quick class. It was 1 day, and it was a pass-fail type deal. Definitely worth it. I haven't in the field needed a whole lot because I don't work in a hospital setting. I work in dermatology, so we're not starting IVs on people. I think I've used it once when I worked in family practice. After that, I took the CMA class. This class was a little challenging. There's a lot of material to go over, from injections of like Toradol or Acefin or whatever else you're gonna push through the deltoid or intramuscular, subcutaneously, in the glute, whatnot. It was a little challenging for me. I was nervous giving the injections at first, but after working in the field, it's kind of like, oh, this makes sense. Like it makes a lot of sense once you do it. From there, I went on to my externship. I did it at an urgent treatment center, and I'm glad I did because I felt like I got a little bit of everything. I got to do injections and EKGs and phlebotomy stuff, flu test, rapid strep tests, STD checks, all kinds of stuff, and it was really cool. From there, I accepted a very short-term position in drug recovery. To be just frank and honest, this was not my cup of tea. I absolutely believe in recovery. I don't want anybody to get that twisted. And I support anybody in recovery 1,000%. But I'm a guy who works well with reward. I like to be able to pat myself on the back on the end of the day and say I did a good job. In drug recovery, if you're that type of person, your phlebotomy skills will fail. And it's tough because, you're trying to draw blood from people who have abused their veins for years and years and years. That's really hard, and I don't work well like that because I need that instant reward, that instant satisfaction, like, yeah, I got it, I nailed it. And I just wasn't getting that. Great job, though. It paid decent as well. From there, I went to work for a pretty well-known citywide clinic that's quite large. I worked in family practice there. Very busy, very, very busy. Barely even time to just sit down for even 5 minutes. Um, Not exactly what I expected from it. However, I will say I did everything there. I did, again, it was a lot like urgent care. I did blood draws, a ton of EKGs, lots of vaccinations on kids, um, and, flu shots, stuff like that, things of that nature, pregnancy test, whatnot. Um, and then from there, I moved into dermatology. And dermatology is where I wanted to be from the very get-go, even when I was in school. My instructor at the time, she had been in dermatology before she started teaching, and she was telling me how much she liked it and stuff like that. So I kind of wanted to be there. So I landed a position there and got really lucky. And I really enjoy what I do. In some of these specialty practices, you're not quite doing CMA work. You're doing like CMA/scribing work, because there's not enough to do for a CMA to do like in dermatology, for instance. We're not giving a whole lot of injections. We're not doing a lot of vitals. We're checking people's skin, um, maybe an injection here and there, lots of charting, stuff like that. But I'm really glad I found that position. What's the NHA test like? Well, it's challenging. I took 3 different ones, the CMA, EKG, and phlebotomy. By far, I feel like the EKG was the hardest, just because you have to remember the different patterns, the different arrhythmias, heart blocks, all kinds of stuff, artifact versus AFib, and just all kinds of stuff. And that makes it quite challenging because this was a 10-day course that I crash course through it 8 hours a day for 10 days. I'm very confident in it now, so I'm glad I did that. Phlebotomy, I feel like was, I want to say easy, but take that lightly. If you get your order of drawdown and know your tube colors and, technique on drawing blood, then you'll pass the class just fine. CMA, the most challenging thing about CMA and NHA is it covered so much. The book is literally this thick. And that was tough because I didn't know what to study because there was so much to go over. But it kind of touched on everything. Lots of CLIA wave testing, stuff like that. I'm really glad I started this journey because I was right where you are right now, wondering what's this going to be like? How does this work? What is the externship? How many hours was the externship? Yada, yada, yada. I've now been graduated for almost a year exactly. And I go back to the school I went to and I speak to the students about one Monday every month, just to kind of answer these questions for them, what's it like, stuff like that. Feel free to drop me any comments or anything like that. If you have a question, I'll try my best to answer them or do another video just answering questions. I know there's a big calling out there for what's this like, what do I do? Where do I go from here? What's the externship like? Stuff like that. Some people don't even know what a CCMA or a CMA does. So essentially, they're the people when you're at the doctor's office in the waiting room and they say, Andrew, or whatever, that's a CMA. They generally get the patient back in the room. They're the first face the patient sees as far as the clinical side. They take their vitals. Their HPI, or chief complaint, is the actual technical term. Basically, what's wrong with you? What's going on? They document just basic vitals: height, weight, blood pressure, their pulse, the oxygen saturation of their blood, stuff like that. From there, you would exit the room, speak with the provider or the doctor, and say, I've got Mrs. Smith here. She complains about a sore throat or whatever. And this varies from practice to practice. Sometimes you'll go back in with the provider and kind of document for them. That's called scribing. Ms. Smith now presents for sore throat. Her diagnosis is strep throat. We will start her on amoxicillin or whatever. BID for 5 days. Something along those lines. In most family practices, you're not going to go in with a doctor. They either scribe themselves or they pay another scribe to do it for But that doesn't mean you won't be busy, because you will be. You would draw any injections up that the doctor orders, from flu to Tdap to HPV to whatever. I mean, just tons and tons of vaccinations. Go back in the room, you would administer those. You would also be the one to go over like aftercare instructions of any procedure, like breathing treatments. You do a lot of breathing treatments, any EKG, basically anything that's going to be clinically hands-on that the doctor can delegate. That's what you would do. So hopefully I answered a lot of questions for you today. Any more that you can think of, shoot me a comment, like and subscribe, and I will do my best to get back to you guys and maybe shoot another video with once I get enough questions to go over. All right, thanks.